My name is Rachel Hayes. I'm 26, and for the last 6 years, I've been running a beat-up diner in Bangor, Maine, trying to keep my grandfather's legacy alive. I gave up college. I gave up friends. I gave up any sense of a future to care for Grandpa Walter after his diagnosis. I cleaned up his meds, drove him to the VA, and kept the family diner open, even when the pipes froze or the fryer blew out mid-lunch rush. Meanwhile, my older brother, Brent, 32, was working corporate law in Boston, making six figures, driving a Tesla, posting inspirational quotes on LinkedIn while he ghosted our grandfather for months. He'd drive up once in a while to make a show, hug Grandpa, snap a selfie for Facebook, then disappear. I was there when Grandpa died. I held his hand, whispered it was okay to let go. I called Brent 3 times. He rolled in 45 minutes late, reeking of cigar smoke and cologne, and asked if the coffee was fresh. 2 weeks later, the will was read. Brent inherited Grandpa's $1.2 million house on Penobscot Bay. Me. I got the diner. Old Greystone Cafe. Appraised at $42,000, with outdated appliances, rotting floorboards, and a blinking neon sign that spelled Gr. Ustone half the week. But that wasn't the twist. The twist was this: Brent's inheritance came with no strings. Mine came with a clause, a challenge, a secret buried in a letter only I was meant to read. Before we dive into what Grandpa really left behind, I need you to do me a favor. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, drop a comment with your city and hit that like and subscribe. You won't believe what I found in that letter. The letter was tucked in the back of Grandpa Walter's ancient ledger, sealed in an envelope marked to Rachel, when you're ready to know the truth. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were 4 pages written in blue ink, in the shaky scrawl I'd recognize anywhere. Ray, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're probably angry, maybe even heartbroken. But everything I did for a reason. And no, Brent didn't win, not really. He explained that he left Brent the house because he knew he'd sell it in months, that to Brent, life was just numbers. But to me, life was service, connection, community. Then came the kicker. The cafe, it's more than it seems. Look under the floorboard in the stockroom, beneath the 3rd tile from the freezer. I didn't sleep that night. By 3 a.m., I was at the cafe with a crowbar and a flashlight, prying up that tile. Underneath was a rusted cash tin. Inside, bank bonds, ownership deeds, and a key, along with a second note. This key opens a safety deposit box at First Atlantic Bank, Box 1273. The box holds everything I saved for someone who'd choose family over fortune. The next morning, I skipped my shift, drove to the bank, and opened the box. Inside, a single USB stick and a notarized document. The USB had surveillance footage from inside the diner. My stomach dropped as I watched Brent sneak into Grandpa's office the night before the will was finalized. He'd rifled through files. He'd taken something. He'd whispered into his phone, "We'll have to rewrite the draft. No way she's getting more than the cafe." He hadn't just manipulated Grandpa. He'd bribed the lawyer. He'd changed the will. And here's where things get complicated, because that second document. It was Grandpa's real will. Witnessed, notarized, unchanged. The cafe was supposed to be mine, but so was the house. The land, the savings account, everything. Brent had stolen it. And suddenly I had the proof. I sat there in the bank parking lot, gripping the USB like it was a weapon. Because it was. In the right hands, it could destroy Brent. But I knew I had to be smart. Brent was a corporate lawyer, slick, calculating, and connected. If I just accused him outright, he'd twist it. Call me unstable, say Grandpa was senile, so I started digging. I visited the probate attorney's office, posing as a client. Her name was Diane Kessler. Sharp suit, sharper tongue. She barely looked up as I asked about contesting a will. But when I leaned in and asked if she'd ever changed a will after it was signed, her pen froze mid-note. "What exactly are you implying?" she asked, cold. I smiled. "Nothing yet." Then I left a copy of the footage on her receptionist's desk in a manila envelope marked "Truth has no deadline." That was step 1. Step 2, I went to the diner. I poured coffee like it was any other Tuesday. I greeted Tom, the Vietnam vet who always sat at the counter, and asked Mrs. Landry if her usual was still scrambled with extra cheddar. Then I made a few calls. To the Bangor Daily News. To a YouTuber who specialized in inheritance fraud cases. and to Grandpa's old friend at the county clerk's office. What happened next unraveled faster than I ever expected. The Daily News ran a story titled, "Local Heiress Accuses Brother of $1 million Inheritance Fraud." The YouTuber. His exposé got over 200,000 views in 2 days. But the real knife? Diane Kessler turned. I guess she knew the footage could end her career. So she made a deal with the DA, testify against Brent in exchange for immunity. 3 weeks later, Brent was arrested at his Boston law firm in front of his colleagues. They seized his accounts, froze his assets, and launched an investigation into his other cases. But I wasn't done. Because the cafe, the one place I thought was just a second-tier inheritance, it turned out to be the centerpiece of something bigger. Grandpa hadn't just left me memories, he'd left me a network. Hidden behind the pantry was a second ledger, handwritten lists of names, dates, and cash donations. My grandfather had been quietly helping families in the neighborhood for decades, covering rent, buying groceries, funding school trips. It wasn't a diner, it was a community vault, and now it was mine to protect. But Brent wasn't going quietly. He made bail, and one night he came back with a proposal. "Drop the charges, Ray, I'll give you half the money. We can say it was all a misunderstanding." I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "You mistook my silence for weakness. That was your first mistake." Then I slammed the door in his face. After slamming that door, I braced myself. Because Brent wasn't the kind of man to walk away bruised, he was the kind to dig in his claws and make you bleed. 3 days later, I found a notice taped to the cafe's door. "Health inspection complaint filed." Anonymous, of course. The inspector showed up at lunch rush. Clipboard, cold stare, looking for something anything. We received a tip about expired meat, mold in the freezer, and rodents. Every head in the diner turned. Regulars looked confused. A few new customers stood up and left. My stomach dropped, but I'd been ready for this. I opened the spotless freezer, pointed to the invoice folder. "All produce is local, organic, and date-tracked. You'll find the supplier list in alphabetical order." He found nothing. Not a single violation, not even a dirty mop bucket. I watched him leave red-faced and saw the unmarked black sedan idling across the street. Brent. He was trying to destroy the cafe because he couldn't win it back. But he didn't know the best part of Grandpa's legacy was what he couldn't see. I'd quietly filed a civil suit. With the original will in hand, plus a witness affidavit from Diane, the court had grounds to reverse the fraudulent version. And thanks to a small legal clinic that Grandpa used to fund under the table, I had pro bono representation. The attorney, Brent's ex-girlfriend, a woman named Madeline Cole. "Let's just say I've been waiting for a reason to professionally gut him," she told me, flipping open her file. While Brent played dirty, I played patient. And while I waited for the court date, something wild happened. The cafe went viral. Someone filmed the health inspection drama, titled it "Corrupt Brother Tries to Shut Down Sister's Cafe, Gets Owned," and within a week it had over 1 million views. People started lining up out the door. Reporters came, influencers posted, donations poured in from strangers who said things like, "My sister tried to take my inheritance too." Brent had triggered a movement, and it backfired. Then, just when I thought I had all the cards, Grandpa's old friend, Hal Richardson, walked in with a weathered manila folder. "Walt made me promise not to bring this unless things got ugly," he said. Inside was the smoking gun. Audio recordings. Grandpa had recorded every conversation with Brent for the last 2 years, including the one where Brent begged him to rewrite the will, saying, "Rachel's nothing, she's a waitress with no life. She'll ruin your cafe. You want to leave a legacy? Leave it to me." I played that recording in court, and when the judge asked if I had any final words, I simply said, "He thought I was small. Turns out I was the only one carrying the weight of this family." Even Brent's attorney wouldn't look up. The judge reviewed the real will, the surveillance footage, the audio recordings, and within 20 minutes, the decision was read out loud. This court finds substantial evidence of fraud, coercion, and manipulation. The original will is reinstated in full. All assets, including the residence at 819 Baywatch Lane and remaining estate accounts, are legally transferred to Miss Rachel Hayes. Brent didn't even flinch. He stared forward, hollowed out. But I saw his jaw tighten, because the one thing he thought he'd always control, his reputation, was gone. Outside the courtroom, the media swarmed. I didn't say a word. I walked straight to my old Civic, where Tom, the vet from the diner, was waiting with 2 to-go cups of black coffee. "Your granddad would be proud," he said. "He raised a fighter." But the final piece of revenge, that came a week later. I called Brent to meet me at the cafe. He arrived looking thinner, paler. His once pristine suit jacket hung off his frame like a costume. I handed him a sealed envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "The deed to a storage unit on Front Street. Everything you left in Grandpa's attic. Photos, trophies. Your childhood bike. I figured you'd want the only things you didn't try to sell." He opened the envelope, and tucked inside with the key was the last page of Grandpa's real will. The part I hadn't shown anyone. It read, "If Brent ever shows remorse, real remorse, and asks for help, Rachel may do as she wishes, but he must never take what he didn't earn." I looked him in the eye and said, "You can start in the kitchen, minimum wage, dishes and floors. And if you quit once, it's over." Brent nodded. He started the next day. 3 months in, he stopped checking his phone every 5 minutes. 6 months in, he started listening to customers. A year later, he could make Grandpa's pancakes without looking at the recipe. He never reclaimed his law license. But he found something else. A rhythm, a humility, and me, I bought out the building next door. Turned it into a food pantry, named it after Grandpa. Rachel Hayes became a name people respected, not because I fought for money, but because I stood for legacy. And when tourists came by and asked if that's really the brother who stole the inheritance, I'd smile and say, "He tried, but I knew how to fight clean, and that's what won."